Does being raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses provide children with a safe, secure base and sense of belonging? No. It offers an uncertain, unsafe, and highly conditional base, as demonstrated by the sadistic shunning of parents, siblings, or friends who leave or are disfellowshipped.
Disfellowship literally means no further spiritual fellowship with the individual. And as I point out, sorry, Chief Justice. As I point out at paragraph 22 of my factum, the nature of the relationship then of a disfellowship person is not completely shunned. The disfellowship person is able to come into the congregation, to the congregation meetings. They're able to attend in the Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses. They're able to sit wherever they like. They can sing the spiritual songs with the congregation. As far as their family members are concerned, normal family relations continue with the exception of spiritual fellowship.
Does being raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses provide children with healthy and consistent nourishment in the form of love, attention, and learning? No. It offers conditional love, praise only when performing a role, nightmarish fantasies, and indoctrination instead of education. Does being raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses provide children with healthy and consistent structure in the form of physical, mental, and emotional boundaries and protection? No. It offers physical insecurity and exposure to pedophiles and domestic abusers, mental cruelty and gaslighting, unhealthy constricting structure, and a complete absence of emotional boundaries.
Another way we can contribute to the oneness, rejecting false stories that are designed to separate us from Jehovah's organization. As an example, think about the apostate-driven lies and dishonesties that Jehovah's organization is permissive toward pedophiles. I mean, that is ridiculous, isn't it? If anybody takes action against someone who would threaten our young ones and takes action to protect our young ones, it's Jehovah's organization. We reject outright such lies.
And again, they are all elders, so they will all be men.
Yes.
And as I understand it, they would be considered to be spiritually qualified, mature brothers. I believe that's the terminology you use.
Correct.
So, and you say that they all go on a 5-month course. Does part of that course, does any of that course involve looking at allegations of child sexual abuse or issues around child protection?
Well, what it does deal with is how to be a good shepherd. And that is the bulk of our work in connection with dealing with child protection issues. How to be a shepherd, or how to provide pastoral care, you might express it.
And so would the people in the service department or the legal department that might receive telephone calls, would any of them received any specific training in child protection?
When you say specific training, yes, they're given specific training as far as our policies and familiarising themselves with our policies, and how to deal with telephone calls that come in from either distressed victims or from elders who choose to call in.
Do you have maybe somebody who's either a Jehovah's Witness or comes externally from, for example, the National Society for the Protection of Cruelty to Children, or from the local authority, or from other organisations who specialise in child protection, to come to provide you with any advice or assistance? Or is it all something which is managed internally?
Yeah, that's correct. It's managed internally because the training is for what we do as a religious organisation. So it's very much a religious application of Bible principles. So that's why we don't have outside training. For example, how to assist victims of child abuse. So that's very much focused on the use of the scriptures to be able to do it.
So you don't have some other religious organisations that we've had evidence from. They will have a sort of child protection department that will often be staffed by people who may share the same religious beliefs, but who will have outside expertise in social work, usually social work, the probation service, education sometimes the law. You don't have that kind of department or that kind of arrangement.
Not in that organised way, no. Simply because we don't feel it relates to what we do as a religion.
You parents, do your best to package the gift of your children so that they will be useful to Jehovah.
Can you summarise from your perspective what the elders do in respect of every congregation? what's their job?
So their assignment involves taking the lead in teaching, taking the lead in shepherding those who need individual encouragement. They take the lead in our key activity, which is what we're well known for, our evangelizing work. So the elders take the lead in, those are the three principal areas. So basically, before someone's appointed as an elder, they have to show that they love the Bible. They have to show that they have a good understanding of the Bible, and they've got the ability to teach well as far as our teachings are concerned.
And again, those elders wouldn't have any specific training in dealing with allegations of child sexual abuse. They might have spiritual training in terms of scriptural advice, support and assistance, but there wouldn't be any sort of practical training necessarily. Am I correct in thinking that?
Well, the practical training is basically reviewing the material, reviewing our policies on child abuse. Such as has been mentioned, they get the shepherding or the flock handbook that's given to elders. They would go through that, which is giving them specific instructions about how to handle such matters. So we do train our elders according to our guidelines and our ways of handling allegations of child abuse.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, Your Honor, Justice Simonis.
So, Ms. Porter, respectfully, the allegation here is the mental and emotional equivalent of waterboarding. Surely you have to agree that if the allegations in the complaint are true, the conduct was reprehensible.
Well, my problem may be that I've heard the tape and I know that it's not true. I understand the allegation.
You've heard a tape. You've heard a tape, which in the First Amendment complaint, the plaintiffs strongly dispute is the tape. You heard a 6-minute tape versus a multi-hour tape that they allege goes into multiple instances of rape. But I'm saying assume the truth, right, of that allegation. Surely you would agree that's reprehensible conduct.
You mean for purposes of an IIED claim? I mean,
for purposes of general human decency.
I guess the reason I'm struggling with your question, and if I may, this proceeding was called for the specific purpose of determining whether she had sinned, whether she was repentant, and the status.
I think we've got lots of examples of your policies and practices. We'll talk a bit later about some of the individual policies you have in respect of child protection, but generally elders are meant to follow those practices and stick to them with quite strict adherence. Is that right? So things which are issued should be followed. They're not, you know, you can do this if you want, you don't have to.
Well, that's when it comes to organizational procedures.
Yeah.
If you're talking about helping people on a personal level, you know, we try to help individuals to reason on Bible principles. So it's not as if elders give instructions as to how a person should live their lives. If a person's looking for guidance in the congregation, we educate our elders to understand the principles that are involved and to share those principles with individuals so that they can make good decisions in their life.
Yes or no? I mean, are you telling me that if the allegations in the complaint are true, you think that that's not reprehensible conduct?
Well, I guess I'm considering the fact that this kind of thing happens in court all the time. When you have two different people, remember the other participant denied that it was a physical rape and actually provided at least some evidence. So they now had a dispute. This happens in court.
Defaulted, right?
Pardon?
So the other participant defaulted. So with respect to the other participant, the allegations are true.
Well, but that's not binding on us. I mean, when another defendant
I didn't
defaults,
say it's binding on you, but for purposes of that defendant in this litigation, he has admitted the rape.
Think about the apostate-driven lies and dishonesties that Jehovah's organization is permissive toward pedophiles.
And can I just double check? We've talked about there not being any sort of child protection department centrally or locally, because it sounds as if you don't have an elder who's in charge of child protection, for example.
We feel that any elder can be approached on child safeguarding matters. So any congregant can feel free to talk to an elder about their concerns.
And again, circuit overseers don't have any particular responsibility for child protection, is that right?
Well, as they visit congregations, they don't get involved with matters with individuals in the congregation because they're only there for a week. And usually with helping for a victim, well, that's a shepherding that may have to go on for some period of time. But they're well versed and well experienced in our principles to be able to give advice if the elders have questions about a matter.
What about the hypothetical that counsel used? What if they played a video of it and it depicted multiple instances of rape as alleged? That would be okay?
no, and I'm not saying whether these things are okay or not. I'm saying that these things happen in court all the time when you are trying to determine the truth. And here it is the core religious function.
I've been a judge for a long time and a lawyer for a long time. I've never seen in court anything like this that's alleged.
The audio?
So I take issue with that.
If anybody takes action against someone who would threaten our young ones and takes action to protect our young ones, it's Jehovah's organization.
How do we draw a line here? If this is an issue of degree, surely your position can't be anything goes within this room because it's a religious adjudication and they're trying to decide if she sinned and whether she can remain in the church. It can't be that anything goes. That's not your position, right?
It is not. It is not my position.
So where do you draw the line? If a religion believes in order to have someone repent, you have to torture that person. You have to do something that outside of the religion society would deem outrageous. Are they allowed to do that? Is that not even a viable claim?
Oh, I don't think torture no, you can't do torture. I mean, the reason I'm struggling is that I don't believe that it's this court's role to prospectively define lines of what it would be. But I'm happy to say torture would not pass that test. The sexual assault would not pass the test.
So if that's the case, then some allegation of something that happened in that room would be able to make out a claim that doesn't violate the Establishment Clause.
I believe that's probably true. I think physical might be a line, but this is hypothetical and not an issue in this case. But like that would line.
What would be the rationale that we would adopt? So we do need to find a line in terms of a rationale that we adopt for what could be a valid claim and what isn't. And here where you have, I don't think there's any disagreement that the allegations themselves constitute an IIED claim. I think the district court said that, look, if this were in a secular setting, this would make out that claim. So if you're agreeing that it can't be that anything goes in that room, there has to be some line. What do you have to allege to make out a successful IIED claim in your view that does not infringe upon the third prong of the Lemon test?
Well, I can give you examples of things, but I don't know that I can articulate a clear line, because all I know is this does not reach that line.
But there won't be a sort of checklist. Sometimes in some other religious organisations we've seen, they'll go in with a checklist and they will ask, have you done this? Have you done that? Are your policies up to date? Have you, various things from, the sublime to the ridiculous. You don't have any process like that.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do have a checklist that we give to Circuit Overseas.
Right, okay. And does that involve anything to do with examining or auditing child protection, or is it more about other matters?
They don't really audit child safeguarding matters, no.
But the thing I'm struggling with here is where to draw this line. I was serious when I asked the question of if the elders had called in the witness who had described in detail all of these things, that she was upset and distressed by that right in front of her parents, that could happen. Under this theory, can they do that? If there'd been a transcript, could they do that? The problem I have is that it's second guessing what everyone agrees these guys were trying to do, which was to make a fact finding. If we analogize to the jury, it's fact finding and then the punishment.
Think about the apostate-driven lies and dishonesties that Jehovah's organization is permissive toward pedophiles. I mean, that is ridiculous, isn't it? If anybody takes action against someone who would threaten our young ones and takes action to protect our young ones, it's Jehovah's organization.
But if I understand your position, Ms. Porter, you say that there are some circumstances in which we would be permitted to second guess. Waterboarding, sexual assault, battery. And I know you're resisting helping us draw a line, but how do you draw a line between battery and the sort of outrageous conduct that is alleged here?
I mean, to me,
from a perspective of second guessing what's going on in that room, how do you articulate that?
And in my mind, I'm just drawing a line mentally in terms of a physical assault or attack or whatever. And I don't, I'm not even predicting what different types of things there can be. I'm just simply saying, this is not it.
And you, of course, that your organization, including people in positions of responsibility like elders, are not immune from the problem of child sexual abuse.
That appears to be the case.
The Royal Commission, the apology, and these yearly reports are about accountability, bringing the truth into the light. So I'm reporting that on 1 July this year, 6 institutions were named as having failed to declare their intention to join the scheme. Since then, 2 of these have joined. We still have, reprehensibly, 4 institutions who have been named publicly and who have blatantly refused to join the redress scheme. They are Jehovah's Witnesses, Kenja Communication, Lakes Entris Pony Club Incorporated, Fairbridge Restored Limited. It's not acceptable. We are currently finalising the further sanctions, I know, that are supported by the opposition, that the Commonwealth will place on institutions who continue to refuse to join the scheme, including withdrawal of their charitable status for these offending organisations.
This is the opposite of protection. This is how you create codependent doormats and victims, people who believe that their only value comes from serving their abusers and tolerating their abuse. So as I said at the beginning, being raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses is, in itself, a form of child abuse. It is also a form of idolatry, because the reality of the child's existence and experience is sacrificed on the Watchtower's altar to the false image of the Jehovah's Witness child and the happy, healthy family that Jehovah's Witness parents desperately need to believe is real. It all comes back to authority. Our parents were never the highest authorities of our lives. The Watchtower was, and for many of us, it still is. Being raised a witness is like being raised in an orphanage by one's own parents. Like they're there, but they're not really in charge of anything, and we know they will not protect us. After rejecting their parental responsibility to provide for and protect their children, Jehovah's Witness parents become fellow dependents whose job it is to enable, enforce, and excuse the Watchtower's narcissistic abuse. Why do they do this? Because it reminds them of the narcissistic abuse they experienced during their childhoods. The Watchtower's abusive orphanage reminds them of home.